Before we go on to a couple other ways of looking at illustrations and how they can be effective and relate to a story, I just wanted to show you a couple examples of some of the things that I was talking about in terms of characteristics or, principles of art, those things that may or may not be there given the choice of the artist. Here, I talked about point of view. If you can see this, you're up here looking down at this illustration. You see how you're flying in the air? And you're above the ship, and then you're looking down on a landscape here. And that's very different than this other illustration. This is what's going on the ground, of looking from the side, just like if you're in a theater, you're placed right here looking on. So you can kind of see the variation that the artist used just between these two comic strips, if you will, in that choice of point of view. I wanted to show you something here too about the choice in color, and I just lost my page. Bear with me, let me see if I can find that. Look here at the limitation, if you will, of choice of colors in this, and that's it gives a very different feeling with really hardly any words that it's getting to be a dark evening, and just by limiting the color palette. Okay, now we're going to move over here and we're going to talk about something quite different, but again, how illustrators work their magic. One of the things that you can ask about a story is if the illustrations further the story. That would be the plot, if you will, and the details of the plot. If the illustrations further it along, and I'll show you an example in just a minute, or if it tells you more about character than the words do, or the setting, or the mood or the theme, kind of the message of the story. And in my advice, and in my opinion, and also your textbook authors, and even the children that are listening or watching you read a story, reading a book with you, is that they will, if it's a quality illustrator, further all of these along. Let me just give you one example. This is a great Canadian author story called Clever Beatrice, and it's really nice for those of you that are looking for girl protagonists, strong girl protagonists, because it takes a traditional folktale and you recognize it if you read it, and it's kind of the David and Goliath story, but the girl that saves the town, saves the family, the person is a little girl. But nowhere in the book, because like most folk tales, it's just pretty straightforward with the action. Nowhere in the book does it really describe what she looks like or how big the giant is. But the illustrator does that for us. And in this case, the illustrator is not the author. Look at the difference between the little girl and how big the giant is. It furthers the story along. You go, boy, she's up against something really big here. And boy, he's not that bad looking in terms of being evil, but tells you more. Because again, these folk tales oftentimes don't give you many details. They're very action-oriented. Look at this little girl in terms of perspective of the well and the rope. And those adjectives aren't even used in the basic storyline. So here we have really a furthering of the story, furthering of the character, even have a furthering of the setting, because this is fall. And even in northern Michigan, southern Canada, where this is taking place. It's fall, it's windy, it's cold, and that'd be very different if it was summertime. Not even mentioned in the text of the book. So in a way, you could say it doesn't just further, but it enhances. Now, some illustrations actually contradict these. I've mentioned to you about let's avoid some of the toy tie-ins and the Disney movie tie-ins. There's nothing wrong with those great Disney movies just from the get-go, with, I think it was Cinderella and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs or some of the early ones. But oftentimes, some of those female protagonists in particular won't look very determined, brave, or strong. They just look kind of pretty when they're out to thwart the evil witch or what have you. They kind of look like they need help, and their dress needs to be a little dirtier if they really don't need help. But it oftentimes contradicts the basic storyline. So I'll try to bring in some examples later this term of some bad books or some poorly illustrated books, in my opinion. We'll take a look at them. So see what you can do. Please contact me if you're not quite following along. Sometimes you have to guess on the media, but I can certainly help you with any of those other things of how to take a look and how to become a little more, we hope, visually literate as the term goes on.